Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today. Are you a LinkedIn user? If you are, you can join me for LinkedIn Live Audio with Elizabeth every week, usually on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I will have a LinkedIn Live audio where we talk about podcasting for executives who speak and podcasting for team leaders who speak. These are the themes that are currently running. If that sounds like something you're interested, visit me, Elizabeth Walker at Work, on my LinkedIn profile. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Okay. Well, Ryan Rigterink, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm very well. How about yourself?
Great. Yeah, and welcome to the Dear Business Coach podcast. So, what I have in store for us is pretty rich. I have a couple of new tools to learn about from you, and I'm looking at actually a bio that I have for you that I would like to read. And Ryan, what I know about you is that over the past 24 years, you've been working across 4 different industries, speaking for companies, innovative business models, popularized the concept of shared purpose, and you were a principal investigator studying workplace transformation. So, reading some more here, a couple sentences. More recently, you founded the leadership consulting company called Leader Ops and the software company WorkGaze, which we'll talk about today, to help business leaders create an amazing culture, innovate great experiences, and stop losing their best employees. And so, why do I need to know that maybe that I'm losing my best employees? Am I losing my best employees?
Well, some people are. Some people are not attracting the optimal employees, and their disengagement has become, unfortunately, a lot of cases the norm instead of the exception. And there's it's been popularized over the last couple of years about quiet quitting, and so they're either staying. Oftentimes, the stats are a good chunk of the workforce, statistically, obviously this varies from company to company, but either stays and is relatively disengaged, or not as engaged as they could be, or they churn out, and it's regrettable attrition. So yeah, I mean, it's very industry specific in terms of what these rates are. But regardless, the case study I did was in one of the highest turnover industries, a call center, and we moved the needle from 8 months to 24 months, and 8 months is the industry standard. And so, there's a huge upside potential in how we actually engage employees, and who they are and who they want to become. That is sort of missing from the infrastructure and the approaches of how we go about hiring and then managing people. So
I think I would normally associate something like a call center, which I used to work in that environment, and I was somebody who stayed there for a long time, and that was because it paid the bills. But a reflection of that industry is, well, I should further say, I do have some listeners that I used to work with, and I met some really wonderful people. That's why I stayed, actually, is because I had a really strong relationship with the folks I worked with.
wow.
But I think that just off the top of my head, I would I wouldn't think of a call center environment, a place where you would even, why, isn't it just known that that's high turnover? Isn't that just the way of that industry?
Well, it is. That's what I hear. That is the norm. But it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't have to be, right? So, what shows up in that space is the fact that nobody grows up dreaming about working in a call center, right? It's an entry level position. It serves an important function, but it's not so much about the work itself, but about how the work serves each individual person's future that really causes them to lean in or check boxes. And that is established in already in the recruiting and selection process of how we one of the phrases I like to use is how we recruit is how we retain, right? So every company recruits differently, but it's also that actually creates the foundation of how people stay or if they do. So
Okay, so you have worked with several different industries, and so the reason I asked that question about, isn't it just a high turnover place, and that's just the way it is? Does I would wonder if maybe your specialty and your experience and consulting, you see patterns of people like who think and say what I just said, which is, well, like restaurant turnover, for example.
mhm.
And I know that you have also said in your work, you are specifically looking at service industries too, I think, right? So are
Yeah.
there some assumptions there that we make about it being a high turnover place, and there's just nothing that we should do about it, or it's just not gonna,
Well,
the industry just is that?
so the assumption is really what we've inherited in terms of how we view hiring and recruiting in the employer-employee relationship, right? It's we have an entire infrastructure over the last, 50 to 100 years that's built off of primarily what does the business need and how can the individual serve the purpose of the company and the organization. That's like 95% of the paradigm around how we hire and retain is the individual serves the organization. But what we don't actually think about or have the infrastructure, which is what we're trying to fill this gap in, is what role and purpose does this position and the work itself serve somebody, the individual's future and their purpose. And so what we've done is we've created this three buckets of information and insights type: who somebody is by design, who they are by experience, our preferred experience, and who they want to be by intention. That actually creates, there's some good academic research around this, that's where work passion, work engagement is formed across when those three things are in alignment. It changes how people show up. It changes how they actually think about the work. Is this just about showing up and checking boxes for a paycheck? Or am I invested in this work because I have connected it personally with where I want to go and I'm experiencing the things that matter to me in the process? So you brought up restaurants. So this is a story I've told a couple times, but I think it so illustrates this point. I was a couple of years ago, I was talking to having an early professional coaching conversation, and this person was looking for a job, and she's like, "Well, I need to find a job. I just know I don't want to work in fast food." Right? Goes to your restaurant question. And I'm like, "Well, that's interesting. Why don't you want to?" She's like, "I've just done that. It's just not for me." And I'm like, "Okay, well, like take a step back, like 3 to 5 years from now, what's your dream? Like, what would you like to do if you could do exactly what you want to do? What would that be?" And I said, or she said, well, I would really be interested in being a speech pathologist. And I'm like, well, that's amazing. Like, that's like, I could totally see you doing that. And I was like, so do you realize that to be a speech pathologist and a partner in a practice, which is what she mentioned, that you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to understand how like different stakeholders of the family have different perspectives, have to be able to ask really good questions, have to be able to document things, have to understand profit and loss statements, engage with scheduling processes, and all of these different, I listed off a litany of things that she would have to really master to do that well. And I said, just for a moment, I'm like, let's pretend if I told you I was a restaurant manager, fast food restaurant manager, or an owner, and I told you that, not long, 3 to 5 minutes a week, we will work on all of those transferable skills that will correlate directly into what you want to do in terms of speech pathology. Would that be of interest? And she literally went from leaning back, I'm not interested, I don't want to have anything to do with fast food, right? The thing that all of us have experienced and felt about our work, right? To,
Mhm.
well, yeah, absolutely. So that was actually my big aha, was so it's not actually about the work. It's not actually about the tasks. It's how those connect and serve somebody's future that matter. And so that was that was one of the big aha unlocks for me, is that we focus on qualifications, we focus on doing tasks, but what we don't actually focus and actually build the data and insights to partner with people on is how that work connects to their future, and doing that in very meaningful, intentional, and personalized ways. And so, if we really want people to show up and care about our business, as business owners, we need to actually have the data and the care and the investment going into the individual to the same degree, because reciprocity happens, right? If we've all had managers that we love to show up and perform for, and we have others where we're like, whatever, right? And it could
Mhm.
sometimes be in the same job, the same expectations, and the same company, and the manager, like it, that relationship and how we're treated and how we've connected the dots towards something that we care about, like it changes the entire game. And so that in a nutshell is what we're trying to really build the infrastructure for in the workplace, because it just doesn't exist. It's built for basically one half of the equation right now, and we're trying to introduce the other half, because literally everybody wins when that happens. The individual is served at a higher level, the engagement and retention, and the productivity and results. We've got the data on how that increases for the company as well. And so it's, to me, like I know I like probably answered this question more fully than you were intending to hear, but like this to me is more than just a software. It's more than just coaching. It's like, how do we actually change work itself for the next generation, that it's less work, like it's actually more enjoyable, it actually serves people's future, and creates more value for both them and the employer. And so yeah, I get going on some of these topics, and it's that's where my love and passion is like, how do we, it's not just about bottom line profits, it's about how do we improve the experience and humanity of individuals finding places they thrive and dream jobs that they can actually be equipped and empowered to become and do, that actually change society.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar. Well, and it's not a little known. It used to be when I was younger that you might prepare for a couple of job changes. That was something you would think about. Um Now it is expected, and it almost looks funny if you stay at one place too long, but it's expected that you're going to have maybe 7 careers in your
Yeah.
lifetime, is a number that I've heard. And it doesn't that sounds about average maybe. So I
Yeah.
think there's a very refreshing feeling when you work for somebody who understands that we both may not be here for the same, forever. And so while we're here, let's, enjoy and build our own skills together. So when you say infrastructure, what I'm getting at here is, I like that word, because infrastructure is makes me feel like you are, if an owner or a group of owners is interested in putting this infrastructure into place to achieve these goals, that the individual feels like they are working towards their personal goals while fulfilling the company's goals. um, it really needs to matter and be a priority for the leadership. So to say that you're put to for a leader to say that they're taking this on as an infrastructure, that really means that it's not a front. You actually are building it into your system and you really believe that. So I can tell, when a leader does see me as an individual and knows that, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I might be doing something else. But right now, that person's interested in investing, their time with me. And I do
Yep.
appreciate that when that happens, and it does make a huge difference. So that word infrastructure is interesting. And so I want to get you to tell me about, there must be a bridge here between where your experience and then in your consultancy, you said you had used your experience to get to this software to create this tool. So how, I'd like to see a little bit about where the tool, how did that come, how did the tool come out of your experience in being a consultant, kind of, uh,
Sure.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the genesis of this actually even predates the coaching and consulting. It actually started with having to really understand my own purpose and going through a number of years in terms of studying across multiple things to really define that well. And so really what we're talking about is a two-sided problem. How do people actually understand and define their own purpose? And then how
Mm.
do organizations actually partner with that? And so this started out with that, and then it led into a case study with the call center I mentioned. And that was really about me getting curious about, I've coached a number of people who have been in toxic work environments and seen how that affects them personally, right into their physiology and health, but also the overflow of that in terms of their relationships, family, and otherwise. And so I got really interested in workplace transformation at the organizational level, and what are the practical steps to move an organization from a rules-oriented, relatively toxic work environment where people are heads down, trying to survive long enough to find their next thing, to one where they genuinely thrive. So that was kind of the that's where I mapped out, working with their leadership, what are the key paradigm shifts that are needed in leadership, and what are the processes and support tools that are needed to actually make that change. So that led into guest lecturing at a couple different business colleges about what I call purpose management, which is about this whole thing about how do we manage people from the inside out. And really not about controlling them, but how do we actually empower them to lead themselves and then partner with that. And so I moved away from purpose management more towards shared purpose, because I think it embodies the sentiment of what we're trying to accomplish. But that really then led into this coaching program you're referring to. So the coaching program looks at every stage of the employee life cycle, and how do we actually apply those paradigms and actually show up differently at every stage to create more value for the organization as well as the individual. It was in those coaching engagements where we were working, literally, I was showing them with Excel spreadsheets and formulas, and here's the data that needs to be connected to give you these insights, that I got some holy crap kind of responses. So it was like, didn't know this was possible. And so
Mm.
when I saw them engaging, and in some cases actually attracting back some key employees that were lost, that was again one of my big aha moments, that if I built the tools that could automate this and actually do it at a whole nother level and in a much simpler way, the easy button equivalent of the PhD level of the Excel spreadsheet kind of thing, that we could really make a dent and it would be scalable beyond the capacity of one business coach. And so that was really where the tools
Mm.
came from, was what's missing, applying that, getting the feedback in the real world, and then building the tools that will make it much easier to not only see but then implement.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
in
well, and what is your what would be an example of you said you got some reactions where you could tell, or you could tell, they could tell, I didn't know this was possible. Is there piece of data, for example, might stand out to you?
Yeah, so one of the things was growth fit, right? We walked through a comparative analysis between the transferable skills between a speech pathologist was the example that I used back then too. A speech pathologist, and in this case, it was a landscape supervisor. And you would never like. I don't think we would probably think that those two things relate to each other, right? And yet, when we look at the
Probably not.
transferable skills, 13 out of the top 15 are transferable between them. And so there's this massive amount of transferable skills that can be developed to your earlier point about changing industry or changing jobs, which now, the world is changing at a pace that is probably some of the underpinnings of that. But there's opportunities to leverage skills into a broader demographic than what is obvious at the surface level. So that was one of the aha was wow, connecting. In this case, it was a key employee that they had just lost, and giving them the insights to show how that employee could actually build transferable skills towards that in the role that they had been, but had never, the employer had not connected those dots, the employee had not connected those dots. And so what it did is it brought this context of meaning, how this job could serve their desired future, that drew them actually back into the position, and with a whole lot more joy and satisfaction in the process, I might add, because they could see, I'm now doing these things because I see the future that I've chosen for myself that matters. And so the work therefore matters more. So
Yes. Well, and you said that there has been something of quiet quitting in the past few years or so, or I've heard that term a few times too. And sometimes I listen to comedians who have their own podcasts, right? And these are great podcasts to listen to. And sometimes they are just, people giving advice just for fun, right? It's entertainment advice. And that is one of the things that comes up a lot. People writing in, what do I do about this situation at work? And it feels like if you're not being received well, or if there's no outlet, communication outlet, if you already feel like, a little bit of like, well, I thought I was accomplishing something here at this job, but as soon as there's any friction or any question, and you don't have a way to feel secure somewhere in your job to explore what is this, what is the friction that I'm experiencing, you might just immediately start down that path of quiet quitting, because there just isn't a
yes.
pathway to even think anything other than, well, I guess this isn't really going to be the place for me, because guess what? I wasn't doing anything important here to begin with. And so you point something out very, very important about thinking about the individual uh, filling their own vision of that purpose. And like you said earlier, instead of trying to fit the employee into, like, mush them into what the
Yeah.
company says the purpose is supposed to be. Now,
Right.
having said all of that, I'm going to push back again a little bit, because isn't this maybe one of the biggest questions, objections, or fears is, okay, 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 great. We have a culture building thing going on here that I'm interested in, but really, at the end of the day, I really do need a person to actually just fill what the job is supposed to be. I mean, isn't that kind of like, after all the warm and fuzzies are over, what was the productivity? Is that what you're proving now with your software?
Yeah, I mean, you can approach it. I mean, any manager can say, I just need, or an owner, I just need somebody to do this, right?
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, that I think we've got a lot of data on how well that works, right? People, people are motivated by money is one lever of extrinsic motivation, but what's much more powerful is intrinsic motivation, like what fuels the individual. So it's not about whether or not the work gets done. It's about how much somebody cares. if
Mm.
the work gets done. And what I hear from owners, especially all the time, is I just wish people cared as much as I do. Well, guess what?
Mhm.
Your business is your vision. It's literally somebody working on your vision. And so, how much are you invested in somebody else's vision? How much are like it's this whole thing of it's really the golden rule applied in the employer-employee relationship is if you want people to show up and care to the degree that you do, then demonstrate and model the level of care in the reverse. It's actually not rocket science, but it is somewhat upside down of what a lot of the current thinking is it's I just need somebody to do A to move A to B, right? Great. You can do that and that's a short-term thing, but like if you're wanting to build more than a task, like you can train a robot
Mm.
to do a task if you want to, right? But that's usually not what we really want. We want people to show up. We want people to care. We want people to care about our customers. We want people to care about doing things with excellence. And so we're not really at the end of the day
Mm.
talking just about productivity. We're talking about and quantity. We're talking about quality and excellence. And so we tend to think in paradigms. Leadership is I think taught to think in the paradigm of efficiency, not as much in effectiveness. And so we get into these where we've optimized for efficiency and we've optimized for getting A to B, but we have lost some of the human elements in that process, and we actually cause other problems like turnover, like disengagement, like a lack of care, like I hear generations getting blamed for not being motivated, and I would say they are very motivated. They're just motivated much differently than some other generations, and actually want to do things that matter and matter to them. And I personally, I think that's a valid thing to want. So at the end of the day, I've coined two terms: pre-productivity and post-productivity, because we tend to think about just the task as being productivity, but the context of
Mhm.
which the productivity is happening, and then how we go about improving that in terms of processes and removing friction afterwards, both of those contribute greatly to the experience as well as the productivity. So in the call center, the productivity went up 20 to 25%, sustained, not just a blip on the radar. And so it's not about it's like productivity is actually a downstream effect. It's not a we tend to like want to directly manage productivity. And actually, if we manage these upstream things, productivity increases. And so it is thinking about it differently. And it is thinking about it with a level of intentionality and care that is on a new level. So
Well, it feels good to think that to know, just to talk to you and know that there is the realization happening that there are people like you that can say, nope, this is actually what the workplace environment can be. We can be these
mhm.
types of leaders. We can implement systems with data that support purpose. And
Yeah.
that's pretty so tell me
And
about
it's a
how
lot
I
more fun.
it's it's a lot more
It's as a
fun.
leader, it's a lot more fun. One of the most surprising things was leaders got about 85% of their time back because we
Oh.
accelerated people towards self-management instead of having to constantly, oversight of everything because people cared. They were driven and fueled internally versus having to be managed as much externally. So it's as a leader, it's playing a different game and it's a lot more fun.
Well, it sounds liberating. Probably, I would venture to say there are plenty of leaders who would love to be able to uh, unleash the power of their team and just are trying to figure out where do I let go, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and people are motivated. So one of the complicated aspects of this as a leader is people are each motivated differently, right?
Mm.
So what we've built the tools around is, without needing a PhD in, in understanding motivation and people and career development and all these sort of things, is how do we just deliver bite-sized data information of we run analytics between ideal work experience and current work experience, so that it just provides some insights on an individual level about, what are some small tweaks as a manager that I can show up not only and recognize each individual in a way that matters more to them, which saves costs because we waste a lot of money and resources on recognition programs that are a one size fits all and nobody really cares about or cares very little. So we give insights on that, and it's very human centered. And it's not about these big swing shifts. It's about what are all these little micro things that we can show up differently and have meaningful interactions that cumulatively really make a big impact. So
Do I have access to like take a peek at your software tool now? How would I get familiar
yeah.
with how would I get familiar with using the tool?
So you can go to workgaze.com and you can schedule a demo, and would be happy to show you. And in fact, we're actively iterating and improving. And so would love not only to show you or whoever else is interested, but would love to get your input, because our goal is to make something as simple and easy to use and very powerful for introducing this piece of the equation into how work is done. So
So, and now I'm at workgaze.com. We're on workgaze.com, and it is spelled just like that, WorkGaze.com. And yes, so there is a red mauve button, request a demo on the upper right hand corner, and I also see a button that says get started today. And so booking a demo is right on the home page. And I can also see some of your content personally, Ryan, on your LinkedIn page.
mhm.
um, so as a speaker, I can also look into some of the work you've done as a speaker too. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can go to leadersops.com is kind of my speaking and coaching. And I'm happy to do that. I'm actually focused more on the tools and helping a broader audience do that. So I'm in the process of switching over from private consulting to probably a group format on coaching, just from a scalability standpoint. But yeah, it's you can find me there. There's some videos, there's content. You can follow me on LinkedIn. There's quite a bit I put out on LinkedIn as well, but really about just trying to how do we make an impact in the world that serves business purposes and people at a higher level and dignifies the value that can be created in that relationship. So yeah, would love to engage with anybody who would like to be one of our early adopters. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and so I know that on your LinkedIn page too, that's also a way to link to workgaze.com. And so workgaze.com, and then when I fill out this information, actually there's not really anything to fill out. I just start with like my name and email basically.
Yeah.
So real easy. So okay, now what let's see, was there something I wanted to ask to close with for you? Um oh, I know. You're an author. Can I ask you to maybe just plug a couple of things as far as what you've written?
Yeah, so I wrote a book back in 2020 called Redesign Life, Finding Purpose about and Balance Amidst Chaos and Uncertainty. And that's really a book was designed about around my own journey and research and applications about defining personal purpose. And so that tells a story of kind of the genesis of where that journey came from in my own life, as well as a framework of sort of a guided framework of if somebody wants to accelerate that process for themselves. That's what the book is really designed to do. And so the other one I'm working on, which has been asked for, is really on this purpose management or shared purpose economy piece, which is what are these paradigms and what are really the frameworks around and all the pieces of this to move from how work is done now to how it can be done with higher mutual value creation. So I'm not sure if that will be a book or a textbook. I was asked to write it by a couple of professors when I was guest lecturing, but that's forthcoming. I have a lot of work to do on that yet before that is released. So.
Okay, well, I thank you for sharing. I like to hear about what folks are working on, and um, that's why the podcast is fun. So thank you for sharing. Okay, so I have one more time. It's workgaze.com. And
Mhm.
Ryan, thank you so much for coming to the podcast today. And
Thanks
I
for
would
having me.
come back anytime, and let's get into the next segment.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify one thing on WorkGaze, we've talked a lot about the leadership employer side of this, but actually the first part that we're launching here is actually going to be for job seekers. So on how we're adding the insights from the job seeker standpoint, as that's what we're standing up first, and then secondly the employer side. So we're engaging on both sides, but if you're currently looking for a job and want to have a way to stand out to employers and that you're a great fit, that's what WorkGaze Job Seeker is designed to help you with. So
Oh, cool. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Well, I hope you have a fantastic afternoon, and I thank you
yes,
again.
thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great
Okay,
to talk to
Ryan.
you.
Appreciate it. Dear Business Coach, the podcast, my name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today.